Parenthood, where we explore the beautiful chaos of parenting. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Parenthood. I am Neha Garg, and I'm so thrilled to have you with us today. On this podcast, we dive into the unique, challenging, and always inspiring journey of parenthood. Each week, we bring you stories from incredible parents who share their experiences, insights, and the lessons they have learned along the way. Today, I have the pleasure of reconnecting with someone very special. Saurabh Nigam is not just an exceptional professional, but he's also someone I've had the pleasure of knowing for many, many years. He's the husband of my first roommate at the postgrad college, Amanpreet. While Amanpreet and I were close, it was Saurabh who I spoke to much more. Now, after many years, we are reconnecting to talk about his journey into parenthood and so much more. Saurabh is the Vice President of Human Capital at Omidyar Network India. He's also an angel investor, startup mentor, and a running enthusiast. His professional journey is as impressive as it is inspiring, and we'll get into that. But most importantly, as he himself claims, he's the proud father to Meher. Saurabh, welcome to Parenthood. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Neha, and I'm so looking forward to it. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here discussing this important aspect of my life with you. I could not have thought of any other better person to get onto a discussion on this topic but you. So looking
Oh,
forward
wow,
to it.
that's very kind of you. Let's dive right in, Saurabh. Imagine your life as a storybook. What would be the title of this storybook be, and what chapter are you currently on?
As cliche it may sound, the title of my storybook would be A Road Less Traveled.
Oh,
And the chapter I'm on right now is the most exciting phase of my life, and we'll obviously go deeper into it. If I have to put the name to this chapter, I would say Excitement Unbound.
that really sounds admirable and something to aspire for. And this is the chapter that you are on. So let me just get ahead of everything and say, probably you're talking about your family. So why don't you get to know a little bit about your family in detail? And why don't we start with Aman? How did you two meet? How has your relationship evolved with time?
Aman and me, we've known each other for almost 25 odd years now. We
Wow.
both come from an army background. Our fathers were served the Indian Army for a long period of time, and both of them were posted at the same place. There's a small town called Devlali near Nasik, and that's where my father and my father-in-law were posted, and that's how we got to meet each other. This was way back when we were in school. I think I was in grade 10 or grade 11, and she was in grade 7 or grade 8. We were family friends, and as possibly you may know, I used to be decent enough in my studies. I used to get good grades, and that's how my mother-in-law got pretty impressed by my grades and my studies, and wanted Aman to reach out to me and get some tips and on how to approach her own studies. So that was my, or rather our first interaction with each other. And yeah, I mean, post that, kept in touch with each other, went to the same engineering college, though she joined the year when I passed out. But yeah, the link remained. We kept in touch with each other. She kept coming back to take tips on how to navigate her studies and then later on career as well. She, as you know, and as you pointed out in your introduction, she joined MICA after working for a few years after her graduation. And it's during her first few weeks of MICA is when she got a call from Tata Institute of Social Sciences.
Yeah.
And that's when she reached out saying that she was kind of confused that whether she should pursue a career in HR or marketing. It was really a wrong person to have asked that question, given that I was an HR professional anyway, right? So I was biased towards my profession. Without any hesitation, I told her HR. And I used to work in Bombay at that point of time. And that's how I would believe that she picked up on my advice and she left MICA and joined TIS in Bombay. And that's when we actually met again after many years. And then one thing led to another. We started seeing each other, got married after a couple of years. Yeah, it's been 14 years since then. And we got married in 2010. 25 years of having known each other, and then 14 years of being married to each other.
That advice that you gave her, was it a selfish advice?
Looking back, and at least Aman does believe so, that it was a selfish advice. I would not like to believe it. The only thing I am willing to give away is that it was biased because she was asking an HR professional whether she should do HR or marketing.
That's very HR of you. You are being very, very politically correct.
Yes, absolutely. As I said, if you ask her, she will never accept the fact that it was not selfish advice on my behalf. I'll never accept that.
And how is it now?
Neha, having known each other for such a long period of time, there's a sense of understanding, peace with each other. I mean, you tend to know each other so well at the risk of actually taking each other for granted. And I'm saying this in a positive manner. I'm not
Yeah.
anyway saying this in a negative manner. So there is that sense of peacefulness that, there is a part of your life which is sorted. There's hardly anything left to be surprised by.
Yeah.
Also, there is a sense of comfort that there's someone who possibly knows you inside out. And it's difficult to get to that part, one person in your life, right? So yeah, that I think is where we are today. A lot has changed in last 7 years since Meher has come on board, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about that. But yeah, purely in terms of how we see each other, that's where we are.
That's so beautiful. And speaking of Meher, let's just talk about her. What is she like? I want you to tell me something that makes her distinctly your own and distinctly Aman's. And how is she
Yeah.
like in general?
Yeah, I mean, I actually can go on this one, right? What is she like? If I have to describe her, she's the one around which our whole life revolves now. She's the one. From the smallest of decisions to the biggest, we keep Meher at the center. I keep Meher at the center. Just to give an example, last year we went on a vacation to United Kingdom. We went to London and Scotland. And last time we were there, it was only me and Aman. This was in 2014-15. I love driving. She loves to drive around as well. And that was the time where wherever we would go for vacation, we would hire a car and we would drive around.
Yeah.
Right. That was a given. Last year, when we were planning for this vacation, the first thing came to mind was that we can't drive around simply because Meher has acute motion sickness. So the entire vacation, 2-week vacation, was planned around that. What places can we go to? Depending on where can we reach those places by train, because we cannot drive. We will not drive around, right? So what we did in those 2 weeks of vacation was driven by, can we reach those places by train or not? Because driving around was just not an option, given Meher was going to be around with us, right? So this is just a small example. That's where it is. I mean, the whole perspective of the life revolves around her. And I don't know whether she knows this or not. I think she's too young to know this right now.
Yeah.
But I think she's getting there. She's also realizing this, that, she is the center of our entire life. It's amazing to see that, how that has started playing out in her own mind.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it a little more. But before that, I'll just talk about that, in what way she's like me, and then in what way she's like
Yeah.
Tom. One thing which really is unique about her, and it's so fascinating because I have never taught her this. I have a tendency, and I one of the principles I live by is, if I'm doing something, I like to go all in into it, right?
Yeah.
I don't like half-baked measures. And for me, the reason I do that is because I firmly believe that, we all are blessed with finite breath. How many? We don't know. And because we are blessed with only finite breath, we might as well make full use of it, which then translates into that if I'm deciding to do something, I might as well put 150% into it. Otherwise, I'm wasting my breath doing something. That's been my philosophy for many, many years. I got hooked onto running. You talked about running as during my introduction. I can actually possibly touch upon that at some point in time. But then that's how it is. And, for me, one fine day I decided that I want to pursue running, and I've gone all in into it. And Meher somehow has picked that. It's amazing how she has, because I never taught her this. At least at this point, because I feel that she's too young to even understand this aspect. But that's how she is. If she picks up something, she will not let go of it until she herself decides or feels that, okay, she has done enough of it. Now, I can give examples. She's been learning Kathak since I think she was 3.5, 4 years old. She just got initiated onto it during lockdown. There was a teacher who used to stay right next to us here in our hometown in Jabalpur. She went there, she liked what ma'am did with her, and she continued. And now she's so much hooked into it that she can leave anything but her weekend Kathak classes. She can leave going to mall, she can leave playing with her friends. In fact, going by the same example of last year when we were planning this vacation, she made me talk to her teacher because she just refused to go for that vacation. She said, I'm not going to miss my Kathak classes. I had to speak to her ma'am to take permission and request her to speak to Meher, that tell her that it's okay to go on vacation sometimes. Only then she went. Similarly, when she was learning bicycle, she just did not let go until she was confident enough of going for bicycle without me. She fell, she tripped, all of that happened, but she just did not let go. And that I find it very, very fascinating. I have never taught her, and she's completely like me on that front. The other piece which, she's picked up in last year or so, again, I have no role to play, though my mom does not believe me in that, is she's extremely finicky about food. That's food. extremely finicky. Exactly like how I was until 4 years back, till I went on to my own fitness journey.
Yeah.
Right? I had very strong likes and dislikes on what I will eat and what I will not eat for
Hmm.
no particular reason. Just as an example, I never used to like Loki. Never. For no particular reason. Now I have it. That's a different matter. About few months back, and she doesn't know this. I have never told her this. Nobody at home has told her this. Just a few months back, my mom asked her what are you going to eat, and there was Loki which was cooked at home, and she said, I'm not going to have Loki. Just like that. And that has just stuck on with her. And when I look at her, she's got exactly the same likes and dislikes when it comes to food, the way I had when I was growing up, when I was a kid. In fact, almost till 4 years back. I have not taught her that, but she's got exactly the same food habits. I don't know how. When I look at her at the dining table or at an outlet, ordering what she wants to order, say at a Domino's, she'll order exactly what I like. I never taught her that. Fascinating how it happens. I'm sure there is some science to this genes and DNA which people talk about. Yeah. I never used to believe that, but I now see it playing out right at my home. Okay, now coming down to what it is like, how she is when I look at Aman. Yeah. So first and foremost is her reading habits. She's all of 7. And she's already a voracious reader. It's so fascinating to see her glued onto books. She's already read 5 volumes of Harry Potter. Yeah. I've not read it once. So I have no idea what she talks about. She does Harry Potter quizzes almost every weekend. Picks up a book, she will not leave it. And that's where combination of going all in and her ability to read comes in. Again, neither of us, neither me nor Aman, have actually forced her into it. All we did was got her some books as she was growing up. The way she's hooked onto it, she can forget eating. She can forget saying hello to me when I come back from home or my father comes back home. But she will not leave a book if she's reading a book. She will not do anything else. And that she has picked up from her mother, clearly. And the other thing which I definitely see in her, which is very similar to Aman, is for the risk of some turbulence at home, I'm going to say this, extremely risk averse. Extremely risk averse. Is it? Yeah. She doesn't like to take risks. She'll play safe, and not just in terms of picking up an activity which could harm her, but also picking up a conversation which can be potentially dangerous. She's very guarded. She's very, very diplomatic. She's very conscious of not hurting anybody. And I also put it down, to risk aversion in that sense. Yeah, right? You don't want to even have the possibility of creating those tensions. Yeah. And that way she's very unlike me, because I'm very blunt. I'm very, very blunt. I'll call her a spade, which Aman never does. Yeah. And so is Meher. She will keep everybody happy. She knows how to keep everybody happy. She knows what to say, when to say. She will not risk even a single relationship of hers. So those are the possibilities. Again, none of this has been taught to her. So it's quite fascinating to see how it all gets played out. And yeah, every day is a new day. And when you see, oh my God, yeah, she definitely is doing something which I used to do, or which I am like, and you've not taught her that. Or what Aman is like, for that matter. Yeah. And it's very interesting, how you are able to see all these things. And I think you are at a stage, by 6.5 years, a child begins to have their own personality, but still be at a moldable stage. So it's like you kind of look back and kind of say that, okay, this is how my child is shaping up to be. But how was it in the beginning? Like, take us back to your journey of parenthood when it began. What was the right time for you to have a baby? Was it a decision that you talked about, before getting into it? What was it like? Where were you in your mental space when you decided to have a kid? And when she came into the world, how was it? It was not an easy pregnancy for us. It took us, because of various complications, took us a long while before we could conceive. We had to undergo, various things, so to say, to reach a stage where finally we conceived. So yeah, from the time we decided that we want to have a baby till the time we actually had, there was a gap of almost 3-4 years. So there was a lot of frustrations. Yeah. Disappointments. Yeah, but we went through all of that. Yeah, when the news finally came to us, when I finally realized then that we're going to have a baby, the next 9 months actually went by pretty quickly. If I think about it now, it's almost a blur. I don't even remember most of the things what happened during those 9 months. Not just because of the fact that we were both so excited, but also because I was at a stage in my career where I was extremely busy. I used to work with Snapdeal at that point of time at Gurgaon, long hours. I definitely did not spend as much time as I would have wanted to with Aman during the pregnancy phase. And that's also another reason why it's quite a blur. In fact, we have this funny story which I'm gonna ensure that she tells is when a day prior to when Meher was born, which is 1st of
Yeah.
September. This was around afternoon time, and she felt that now is the time to go to the hospital, and she told my mom and my father. I was in the office, so they took her to the hospital. Doctor checked her, and they called me when I was in office. Before I could leave office, doctor told her that it was a false alarm, and they came back. Right, this was first afternoon. So I came back home in the evening. She's like, okay, you didn't even come and all. I said, no, I was about to start, and I got the news that it was false alarm, so I went back to office. Everything happened. We had a dinner, we went to bed, and around 2 o'clock in the night, this is 2 a.m. on 2nd of September. So she wakes me up. She's like, we have to go to the hospital. I like, no, it's a false alarm. Don't mess up with my sleep, and this, while I say that most of my memories are a blur, but this is not a blur. Right? I specifically remember I did tell her this, that listen, you sleep. I know, this could very well be another false alarm. You're just panicking for the heck of it. Let's sleep. She said, no, we have to go. She actually had to literally force me to get out of my bed. And then I said, obviously, we woke up, and then we took her to the hospital, and the Meher was born around at 9 in the morning on 2nd of September, 2016. And honestly, Neha, while you told me just before this conversation that you actually landed up on the day she was born, I don't remember that. That's, to be honest, first few days and months, and I'm going to ask this question to you as well, because you've gone through it yourself just a year back. I won't even call it a blur. I just do not remember anything. I just don't remember anything, except for the fact that when she was born, when Meher was born, and we saw her outside we as in me, my mom and my father, we saw her outside the operation theater. And then one of the procedures is that you have to go and register the baby at the hospital. So I went there, and typically what the hospital staff does is it writes baby of Amanpreet, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And in our case, what I had actually done is that I was so convinced that we're going to have a daughter. I thought about her name, Meher, for many, many months, by the way. Everybody at home kept telling me that, what if it's a boy? I said, then you guys decide what you want to name him, right? I'm very convinced that it's going to be a daughter and she's going to be called Meher. So when that chap was writing down baby of Amanpreet, I was like, stop, she has a name. She's called Meher Nigam. Kindly write that down. Actually, aapne naam bhi soch liya. I said, yeah, please write it down. So I can never forget that. But except that one piece and the other one, which I'll definitely share with you, it's a ritual which I've been following. So the day Meher was born, and immediately after I saw her, got her registered, the second thing I did was went and donated blood. Oh. And that's a ritual I've been following ever since. On her birthday, I go and donate blood. There's no reason for it, but yeah, I just like doing it. That's my way of contributing or giving it back to whosoever has blessed us with Meher. Those are the two things which I vividly remember: going and registering her by her name at the hospital, and then donating blood.
But sorry, I have to interfere here, and I have to ask you, did the hospital register her name?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happened in our case, and that is what was making me laugh so much, because we had decided our baby's name before he was born. So we went multiple steps ahead. We had planned for all situations. We had decided the name before we conceived. So we had decided 4 names in total. 2 boys and 2 girls. We really, really wanted to have twins. We wanted to, so we wanted to manifest that in some way. And we had decided 2 boys' name in case we have 2 boys. We had decided 2 girls' name in case we have 2 girls. And we had set them in order of priority, that if there is girl 1, so this is the first name, boy 1, this is the first name. All of that was there. So the moment we got the news that it's a boy, so the first name of the boy category was Rishan. And I'm like, I am telling, like, my stomach is being cut and doctors are taking out the boy. It's a boy. And I'm like, he has a name, Rishan. He's called Rishan. And then my doctor is just looking at me. They're like, we don't care. They didn't say this, but they gave that expression. And while all of this was happening, I didn't know what was happening outside, but I got to know the story later. Just as you, my husband Siddhant was supremely excited that we have a name. So he went and, on the counter, and people are saying baby of Neha Garg. And he's like, no, he has a name. It's Rishan Garg Batra. And please write that. And they're like, sir, please don't get ahead of yourself. This is our protocol. Even if the baby has a name, we will call him baby of Neha Garg. And poor thing, he just came back with us, muh latka ke and all. So he was telling me the story. That's why I was very intrigued to know. You
No.
got
I
the
insisted. Every single record of hers from day one has Meher on it. We don't have a baby of Amanpreet written anywhere, including that they tie
yeah,
something on their wrist or
yeah,
even
yeah.
that has Meher written on it. Yeah, so we were lucky to get a hospital which was accommodating enough to write the name. And the guy wrote the name and said, like, okay, where to donate the blood? He's like, sir, blood is not needed. No, I said, I need to donate the blood. And but then beyond that, to be honest, Neha, first few days, oblique weeks, I just don't remember anything. It's such a blur. Maybe because we were exhausted, whatever, or we were too excited or happy. There were guests at home as well.
Yeah.
I don't remember much, except a few little things which started coming up. Like I remember the first night it was my mom who stayed with my with Aman in the hospital. Second night I insisted I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I went to bed. I don't even remember at what time in the night she howled. Meher howled. That was the first experience of being woken up by the cry of a baby, right? So little things I do remember, but most of the stuff I don't recollect for first few days and weeks. And then obviously when we got her home, everything was new. We were blessed. We've been blessed that our parents have been with us even before Meher was born. They've been with us, so we always had that blessing with us, that they were always there to help, guide, support. But there were also been times, even till today, where they will tell us, "You guys don't know how to raise a kid." Yeah, absolutely, we don't know because it's the first time for us, right? But yeah, that's how it's been. Absolute roller coaster. I can't have a better word to describe those first few months or even first 1 year of Meher's existence in our lives. I can go into specifics, but I'm sure would love to hear from you because you're right there. How has it been for you? How much do you remember? How much of it is a blur, and how does it feel 12 months down the
I
line?
thank you for giving me this space to talk about me. I remember most of it. I remember the specifics, I remember the non-specifics. And what I don't remember are I think I remember, but when somebody asks me, I'm like, oh, oh yeah, we also did that. Oh, there was also that
Yeah,
phase. But I
yeah, yeah,
think while it is happening every point in this journey, it needs you to be so present that you think you remember everything and you're going to remember everything, but
yeah,
it just takes so much of you, and probably you give so much of yourself in the process.
yeah,
Like, it's a choice, right? As you said in our initial conversations, that it's totally a
yeah,
person's unique and
yeah,
individual journey when it comes
yeah,
to parenting. And I really think that I have been there present, so it
yeah.
is there somewhere, but in terms of specifics, maybe I don't remember so much.
Yeah, yeah. Very much like you, very much. In fact, when I look at some of the photographs of that time, it's like, "Acha, aisa bhi hua tha. This also happened." And
Yeah.
then when you jog your memory, then you remember.
Yeah. And Saurabh, I'm really glad you talked about your parents being there with you. I am, a big believer in saying that it takes a village to raise a
Yeah,
child. And I think not just to raise a child, to do anything in life, it takes a village.
yeah.
But because we are talking about raising a child specifically, what does your village look like when it comes to raising Meher?
It's a very small, tight-knit village, but it's a very self-sufficient village. So it's only
Uh-huh.
four of us, fifth one being Meher. So it's
Uh-huh.
me, Aman, my mom, and my dad. We've been together. We've been together throughout, right? COVID times, non-COVID times, vacations. The reason I say it's tight-knit is because what I just said a little while back. Ever since she's come into our life, she's the focal point.
Yeah.
Everything revolves around. Why it's tight-knit is because we step in for each other, right? I mean, both of us are working. Me and Aman are working.
Yeah.
Mom and my dad retired long ago from Indian
Yeah.
Army. We step in, right? And we step in wherever required. One good thing which has happened with us is, in fact, that was a conscious call I took just before Meher was born. And I told it to myself that there's nothing I would not do for her. I just hate the point when I say that this is mother will do this, father will do it just does not make sense to me. So except the technical part which is feeding her,
Right.
I've done every single thing for my health. I don't take great pride in it. I just feel that it's only normal and it's only
Yeah.
natural to do that. And so is the case with my mom and my dad as well. We have taken turns to put her to bed. We have taken turns to give her a bath. Every single thing which a little baby would need. It's
Yeah.
not been that okay, XYZ only Aman will do and ABC only
Yeah.
mom will do. Nothing like that. And that's why it's so tight knit. We can step in wherever we want to. It's not
Right.
that, okay, there is this dependency that, oh my God, if Aman is not there, then what will happen? And, that also is kind of resonated with Meher as well. She also does not have this tendency that I will do this only with Papa, or I will do this only with Mom. I mean, she's as comfortable with my mom and she can spend the entire day with her, with neither of us being around, as she is when nobody's around and she's only with me.
Right.
And that, I think, is a huge blessing, because I just feel that from a perspective, both sides, from Meher's perspective, I just feel that how her ability to connect with her grandparents and her father and her mother is that much more, just because we are so close to each other, right? We're so involved. And for us, obviously, it gives us that flexibility as well and the freedom. None of us have actually gone down that path ever that, hey, if I'm not around for a few days, which has obviously happened, right? Given our profession, given our jobs, what will happen? That confidence means a lot, actually. That flexibility and that confidence means a lot, right? So that's my village. As I said, it's very close, but very tight knit. And I feel extremely blessed that I have that village around me.
It's so interesting, I think this is very important that you've just said. Anybody in that circle, anybody can step in for anybody. I think that creates that level of confidence that, the kid is also, they don't have this, that, okay, for this is the mama's role and this is papa's role and this is dadi's and dadu's role.
And it's a very important aspect for her as she grows up as well, because somehow I just feel that those inherent biases which we have, those biases starts getting built in right at this stage itself, right? The moment you start having those divisions within the family, that this part X will do and this part Y will do, unconsciously those biases are creeping in then in the child's mind.
Right.
And I just feel that in her case, at least, that's not the case.
Yeah. And now that we are talking about this, Saurabh, and interestingly enough, you are in the people's business, your professional line is HR. Was this always there? Is this the person you always were, thinking of division of labor and, how women and men, even though we are not talking in these terms, these are the concepts we are talking about, right? Equality and dignity of labor and division of work at household level, at professional level. And only when a woman is happy or cared for, or, things are taken care of in the household, can she do good at her work. How do you see that? Is this the person you always were, or has it come with raising a child?
So the thought around that there shouldn't be any differentiation just because of a different gender was always there. How it came in, maybe it was part of my own upbringing, which my parents gave me, being brought up in an army household. I think, equality was something which my father always taught me, right? That treat people with respect, irrespective of which strata they come from, which gender they come from, what they do, what's their background, was always ingrained. Respecting individuals for what they are was always ingrained in me. And I think an offshoot of that was the equality part, which you just talked about. I have never looked at the world in terms of being black and white, in terms of a certain part of work or certain kind of work can only be done by a certain gender or certain type of people. No. In my teams, never had those kind of biases creeping in. And I think it has worked for me in my favor, right? Because I fundamentally believe that ultimately what matters is your ability to do a certain job. And that comes with skills and attitude, nothing else. And a skill and attitude can be developed by anybody, irrespective of the gender they come from or irrespective of the strata they come from. And when you keep that lens, and when you look at people only from that lens, when you're building out your own team for a certain role, for a certain job, and if you only have that lens, you will always end up creating a pretty high performing team. I mean, and I'm talking from my own experience here, right? So that piece was always clear to me. It has always remained with me. It has always worked for me. What I learned after Meher came on, just before Meher came on board, and then, taking up this role, I'll tell you what things I actually imbibed. So it was one thing for me to say that, okay, you know what, I will ensure that I do pretty much everything once Meher comes in, right? Whether it was changing her nappies, feeding her. It's one thing to say it, and second thing to actually learn it. I had no idea how to do all of this, right? What I firmly believe, and now when I look back at it, that a child teaches, right? A child really, really teaches you how she will eat, how she will go to bed. There was so much of trial and error in doing that, right? Because first time when you're putting a baby to bed, you have no idea how she's going to sleep, and struggled big time. But she'll tell you, sing to her. I never sang, by the way. What to speak to her, what to say to her, how to stroke her. all of that I've learned, and I do believe that I've kind of mastered it now to a large degree. But she taught me, right?
Yeah.
And the thing which I realized is that for you to learn something new from scratch, there are two things which are extremely important. One is your willingness to learn, and second is patience. I don't think I ever had the amount of patience which I have now, because when I look back, it's not as if we've not learned new things. We've all gone through our schooling and graduation and postgrad, and without actually commenting on our education system. But there's a method to that entire madness. I never felt that I needed to have this tons of patience to learn calculus back in 12th standard. There was a teacher, there was all of us, and there was a method to this madness, as I said, and you learn. Here, there was no playbook. There was no teacher out there. There was only me and her. And you had to play and do trial and error and, figure out you will fail, you then again try again. Teaches you immense tons and tons of patience. So for me, my biggest learning from this has been that, you can learn anything, right? I mean, if you can learn how to raise a child, you can learn anything, provided you have the willingness and the patience, because it's not going to happen overnight. So yeah, those two things I would say. And then obviously that has now played back into my professional life as well. People who have worked with me or who have seen me before Meher came on board, came in our life and came on board. See, that's my HR person. That's my HR came in our lives versus what it is now. They say that, right? The degree or the level of patience which I have has gone up significantly. So yeah, that's been a change. That definitely has been a change ever since Meher has come.
Now that you speak of, your professional life and, how you have evolved and all of that. So where are you? Not just professionally, like in your journey of life, where are you? What is happening? What is the ecosystem around you like? What stage of life you are at? And within that, then how do you balance the various roles that you have to play?
So Neha, as I said, since the time Meher has come in, she's been the focal point, the central point around which all the decisions have been made. Before she came, and I used to be, and you met me before Meher was with us, right? And I have no cons in saying that I used to be extremely ambitious person when it came to my career. There were certain milestones I wanted to achieve. There's a certain growth trajectory I wanted to have. There's certain roles I wanted to do. There's a certain, I was very clear in my mind that these are the things I wanted to achieve. And by God's grace, many of those things I ended up achieving as well. And I'm not going to go down that path in terms of what it took out of me to do that. But in that journey, in that phase of journey, what happens is, and I say this a lot to a lot of people, is that your priorities change as you go through your journey. When you start off, typically for most of us who come from typical middle class backgrounds, when you start your career, you end up or you tend to put in disproportionate amount of your time, effort, and bandwidth on your careers. And that's very natural, simply because you're coming from a certain strata of the society where, making sure that you have that stability in your career and you're making a mark for yourself is extremely important. And that also is how we all were brought up, at least in our generation, in the strata which way we come in from. So it was for me as well. And when you do that, right, and I don't think there is anything wrong about it. In fact, even if it is, I'm not going to debate on that part because we all have our context around it. But when you do that, your ability to think or put in your time and effort on anything else, whether it is your own self, your own well-being, both physical and mental, your family, goes down, right? Because you only have those many breaths, the finite breath concept, which I talked about. And because I had always had that concept around going all in, I literally went all in for significant part of my career until Meher came in. And to me, my disproportionate amount of time and bandwidth was going towards my career. Very little or negligible was going towards my own self or my family. When I say family, I'm not just talking about Aman, but also my parents for that matter. Obviously, that played out and manifested in many ways, right? Whether it was me putting on excessive weight, all sorts of health issues, spending extremely little time with family, not going out on vacations and stuff like that. I actually compromised all of that. No regrets. But that's the call one ended up taking. Come Meher, things changed. Things changed overnight because the priorities changed. When you decide to get a life into this world, I fundamentally believe you have that responsibility towards that life, because that little life has no idea, what it takes to forget about thriving, survive in this world. Right? You decided to bring that life, and that's exactly the thought process I had in those initial few weeks before Meher was born and after she was born, is that entire perspective about that, what does it take and what does it mean for your own self. And it took a lot of time to then understand that, the way one was approaching life until now, wherein almost disproportionate amount of my time and bandwidth was going towards career, had to change. Right? It's one thing to think and figure it out in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's another thing that it takes for it to flip. It just cannot flip overnight, right?
Right.
Because you're so deeply entrenched into that entire rat race, if I may say so, of your career and your profession. So it took a lot of my time for me to get to a stage where today, when I look at myself, and if I say there are three buckets, right? And that's I wrote on this sometime back in my newsletter as well. There are really three buckets which I look at in my life. There's a profession, career, job. There is my own self, my passions, my health, my fitness, what I want to do. And then there is my family. These are three buckets. Today, if I look at myself vis-a-vis what I was, say, 15 years back, where pretty much everything was in my bucket number one, which was my career and profession, I would say disproportionate amount of my time, effort, and bandwidth goes in bucket 2 and 3. What happens then is, now that's a call which I've taken. That's a conscious call which I've taken. And I'm extremely comfortable with the fact that the moment you do that, obviously there's only limited amount of time and bandwidth you're putting in bucket one, which is your career and then profession and job. And it's important to understand that the moment you take those calls, that you need to be comfortable about it. Because if you're not comfortable about it, you're going to be very, very frustrated and you're not going to do justice to any of these things then. Right. So today, if you look at it, I'm at a very, very at peace with myself with the fact that, I've taken this conscious call, which happened about 4.5, 5 years back, and we can talk about it. When I said, what, for me, it's extremely important to take care of my own self, right? Spend time with my family. The time which when Meher is growing up is not going to come back, and the time she needs from me, in my view, is going to go down, and this time is not going to come back, right? So that was a conscious call which I took, and I'm extremely comfortable with that, at least at this point in time. I'm not saying that I don't look at my job or career or profession. I don't do my job. I do it, but I know what my boundary conditions are now, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm also comfortable with the fact that with those boundary conditions, there is a certain level at which, or there's a certain pace at which my career will move now, which is very distinct and different from what it was 10, 15 years back, because I was putting so much of effort and time in. But I made peace with that, and I'm extremely comfortable with that. Right? So that's where I am. Now, that flip happened about 4.5 years back. It's funnily enough, I'll tell you the story. I took a step back. I said, this is it. I cannot continue like this. This was just after the first lockdown during COVID times. I think July, August 2020. Meher was little less than 4 years old, had bought her a new bicycle, and I was trying to teach her how to bicycle, right? And when you have to teach her how to bicycle, you have to run with the kid. And that was the time when I was at my peak of my unhealthy habits, unfit version of myself, right? I was 100 plus kilos, all sorts of junk food habits and all of that. Obviously, I couldn't run. I couldn't keep pace with her. And she fell. She was all of 3.5 years old. It just didn't sound right for me to see that, you've brought, as I said, this life into the world. And you can't even keep pace with her for 50 meters. And that, to me, that was a trigger to say, okay, there's something which needs to be done about this. And that was the time when I actually flipped and, I started thinking about it. How do I take care of my own self, right? Because if you want to be around to be able to do justice to this little life which you brought into the world, it starts with your own self. You need to start taking care of your own self. And it's that day till now, it's my focus has completely changed. You've seen that version of me, so you know what I'm talking about. For me, there are the non-negotiables in life now are my own fitness regime, what I eat, what time I sleep, how much rest I'm taking, making sure that I do my health checkups every 6 months. So that's, to me, all of that is non-negotiable. And the non-negotiable is the time I spend with my family, specifically Meher as well. And then obviously, and as I said, I'm not neglecting my job, right? Because it's important. I've still not reached that stage in my life or my career where I can say that job is not important. I've still not reached a level of financial independence. But that's the flip which has happened to me pre-Meher, post-Meher. And I'm extremely comfortable and actually very happy about that.
Yeah, you sound happy and you look happy, and I've been itching to ask you this question since you mentioned this, that when you say that, Meher has become the focal point and she's the center of your universe and all, there is a palpable ecstasy and pride and joy is very visible both in your voice and on your face. I'm really touched by the kind of joy that is shift has brought about in your life. How does that happen? I mean, what makes you see it in a positive light? You could have very well, begrudged that, oh my God, my life is revolving around my child, as someone might do that. What makes it a good thing to have your life revolve around your child?
I can't even imagine how having a child in your life and having your life revolve around her can be a bad thing. I just cannot imagine that. It's just beyond my comprehension. Let me put it this way. coming to the fact that, how does it happen and why do I see that, or why do you sense that excitement in my voice whenever I speak about this? The reason is very simple. Up until this happened, up until Meher came into life, I have no qualms in saying that almost every single action of mine was extremely self-driven, was motivated by my own happiness or my own well-being or my own career progression. It was very selfish, right? And again, I'm not saying selfish in a bad manner. I'm saying selfish in a positive light only, right? It was all directed towards me, largely. I'm not saying that I did not do anything for my family or anything. I don't think I was that bad a husband or that bad a son. But largely it was towards me, right? It was my own career. It was my own education. It was my own grades, right? It was my own promotions, and everything was around me. It's only after she's come on board, she's come on board again. I know, with her being in the center, and to me, it is the most obvious thing to do. So it was not even a decision that, hey, listen, what do we do now? It just happened. She came in and then she just came in and dropped in right in the middle, and then she's been in the middle throughout, and I'm sure that's going to remain always. So it was not like a decision tree was being made or nothing like that. But the way it excites me is the reason, because now I see that because I'm taking or thinking about her before deciding on anything, there is lack of, if I may use that term or phrase, I don't even know if it is proper English. It's not about me. It's no longer about me. It's about someone else, and that someone else happens to be your daughter, who gives back to you much more than you possibly are giving to her. I firmly believe that, by the way, right? So the moment when all your actions and your thoughts are driven towards and for someone else, I just feel that it is so satisfying and so fulfilling that there cannot just be a better thing than that. I guess that's what happens when people go down the path of actually, doing some impact work or, working with impact organization and so on and so forth. I've been doing that as well for many years now. But somehow it just cannot get replicated. It doesn't get replicated the same way when you're doing it for someone of your own. A life which you have brought into the world. And in our case, after a lot of struggle as well, by the way, right? I mean, it just didn't happen so easily for us as well. And then, as I said, we spoke about it, there's so many things which she ends up doing which reminds you of your own self. It just goes all in, just the way I have been doing for many years. I have never taught her that, right? And therefore, also that feeling of, I don't use this word because I somehow don't like it a lot, but feeling of leaving behind a legacy is actually playing out it right in front of your eyes. So when you're gone, when your finite breath are gonna be over, I'm assured of the fact that there will be a part of me which will still remain here, right? And that's gonna remain here. That's so fascinating. That's so beautiful, right? And therefore, whatever you're doing by keeping her right at the center of your world is so very fulfilling. I mean, that's how it is actually.
And also when I think about it, like I totally agree with your philosophy. That is my and my husband's philosophy as well. What other way there is? This is how you want it to be. And I love the way you put it. It's so insightful to hear you say that. I am now thinking, you've talked about your professional life and you've talked about how you have taken this call that you will focus on yourself, your fitness, your mental health, your physical health, amidst the demands of parenthood, amidst the demand of, having a very, very senior role at an organization, and then being a family man, so to say. So many things to so many people. How do you take out time for yourself?
So Neha, the thing is, one of the realizations I've had over the last 4 years since the time I made that flip or made that switch is you can have n number of excuses not to do something, and you can have n+1 number of excuses to do something. It's up to you. And the thing which makes it happen is the moment you make something non-negotiable in your life, you'll find a way to do it. For me, my fitness journey has become a non-negotiable. And when I say fitness, I'm talking about workouts and primarily running. It's become totally non-negotiable. I run not because I'm looking to lose weight or anything. I just run because of it gives me my time. Also, I obviously know that there are these side benefits now, I call it, that you are fit. If you run, you will be fit. To me, it's a non-negotiable. And I've made it a non-negotiable. And the moment I've made it a non-negotiable, I find ways by making sure that my entire day gets set by making sure that I don't miss out on my run. I'll give you an example. If I have a 6 a.m. flight to catch in the morning, and I have to run for 2 hours as per my schedule or as per a program that particular day, I would wake up at 2 in the morning and go for a run. I've done that. If I have to wake up at 2 in the morning, and for me, having 7 hours of sleep also is non-negotiable, by the way. So if I have to wake up at 2, just backtrack, I have to sleep by 6 o'clock or whatever, 7 o'clock. If I have to sleep by 7 o'clock, I have to make sure I basically try and finish my dinner at least a couple of hours before I hit the bed. I have to finish my dinner by 5 o'clock, or else I skip it. I do that. If I have to sleep by 7 o'clock, because for last couple of years, invariably it's been me who puts Meher to bed, I would have to ensure that she goes to bed as well. Right? And she has like over a period of time, we have inculcated a habit of she going to bed by 7:30 in the evening. If I have to have my dinner by 5 o'clock, I need to be home by 5 o'clock. All I'm trying to say is that, because I know how my day is going to pan out, and I have this non-negotiable that I'm not going to miss out on my run, I plan my entire day accordingly. And it's in your hand. Planning your day is in your hand. Nobody, can decide that how you plan your day. So that's just an example. I go on vacations. One of the first things which I do when I plan out a vacation is look for running routes, so that I don't miss out on my runs when I'm on a vacation. I firmly believe that, as I said, you can have n number of excuses not to do something. You will have n plus one number of excuses to do it, provided you've made it non-negotiable. What you want to make non-negotiable in your life is up to you. And different people will have different non-negotiables, and there's absolutely nothing wrong about it. You decide what you want to, but make sure that you have those non-negotiables clearly defined for yourself, because the moment you do that, you'll figure out a way to do it. That's what I believe in.
And it's so interesting that you talk about planning and, having your day laid out, because that's the kind of person I am. I need to have, things in place. I need to have my calendar and my planners and, all of those things. But one thing I have also realized, and maybe I'm too, young in this journey of parenthood, that once you have a child, almost most of your planning goes out of the window. So how do you account for those invisible or unexpected disruptions?
So it changes. So you need to understand, that's the point that I was trying to make, is that different people will have different non-negotiables in their lives depending on their context and the stage of the life they are in, right?
Right.
So if I were to rewind back to the time when Meher was a year old, or less than a year old, the non-negotiable was to ensure that I'm around when she needs me. Right? Everything else would take a backseat.
Right.
I'm sure that's the case with you as well. If your child calls you now at this point of time, I'm sure we're going to pause this conversation. And rightly so. The important point here, Neha, is that figuring out what that piece is for you, which is non-negotiable for you at this point of time, and making sure that you make accommodations around it. Most importantly, then being comfortable about it.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that if you've made certain plans for yourself, right, with respect to your job, with respect to some of your passions which you follow, and those plans go for a toss because your baby needs you, and obviously you have prioritized that, you made that non-negotiable, that you need to be around him when he needs you, right, and because of which everything else takes a back seat. It's important that you're comfortable with that. Then everything else will fall in place. So that's the thing which is important, that, when you, and I don't ever use the term compromise here, because to me, this is not a compromise. These are choices. These are choices we are making. Right? Nobody is forcing us to make that choice.
Absolutely.
Right? You could very well say that, I'm not going to miss my yoga class, come what may. Even if my child wants me, I'm going to go for my yoga class. But if somebody makes that choice, it is absolutely their choice. Right? But important point is that once you've made the choice, don't feel bad or regret or feel guilty about the choice which you did not make. Right? That's very, very important, because otherwise you'll never have peace of mind. So if I were to use my own example, right? So because of this entire fitness journey and making running as non-negotiable, some of the things which I've completely let go. I don't watch TV. Okay. I don't watch OTT at all, right? I have zero screen time. The only time I look at screen is when I'm in a flight, because I can't sleep, and that's the time I, download something on Netflix and I watch it. Otherwise, I don't. I don't spend a lot of time, post dinner chit-chatting when everybody else in the family is doing it, because I need to go to bed, right? I need that amount of sleep. Now, those are the choices which I have made, right? And I'm comfortable with that. My family is comfortable with that as well. Now, suddenly, if I start brooding about the fact that my colleagues are talking about this new Netflix series, which I've not even seen or I've not even heard, because I'm not even looking at those, then I'm doing a great disservice to myself, because I've made choices. And if I start feeling bad about about things which I consciously have left out because of the choice I've made, then that's a great disservice to myself. So I think it's important to be at peace with yourself and being comfortable about the fact that what choices you're making, and then going all into it and making it a non-negotiable, right? So coming to your point, you will see that shift, right? As the child grows, and that's the point I've made, right? I realize the fact that the amount of time Meher needs from me is going down day by day. I think that's a fact of life. We all have gone through the same journey. That there comes a point in time you don't want your parents to be around, right? You want to be locked up in your own room with your own friend. That's part of growing up. I'm sure one day will come for Meher as well. Same is going to happen with you, right? I mean, as you go through this journey, as your boy grows up, you'll see that the time required with him or time he needs from you will shift. And that's the time when you can make those adjustments for your own plans and the things which you want to do and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, I don't think I would have been able to have this kind of a routine when Meher was 1 year old. There's just no way I would have been able to do it. And I'm perfectly okay with that.
I think that makes so much sense. I really love the fact that you talk about, having non-negotiables and then recognizing the kind of choices you want in life and then making those choices. Because a lot of time, what I have seen and felt is that around us, I mean, I consider myself to be a very self-aware individual who knows what she wants in life and has kind of designed my life around it. But what keeps people stuck in this zone is not knowing what are the non-negotiables and then keep struggling that I'm not able to do this, I'm not able to do that. So it's very refreshing to see that you have that kind of, I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from you, but to see that level of self-awareness about what you want.
But I'll tell you one thing, Neha. One thing I all tend to agree with pretty much everything you say and you have said over the years, but this particular point, I have a slight different view here. Okay, I don't agree with the point that one doesn't know what he or she wants. I feel everybody knows what he or she wants. How good or bad that is for you is a different matter. I'll give you an example, right? So we all, or most of us, have been in that phase when we would go parties, do late nights, do binge eating and drinking and whatnot, right? And right or wrong, I'm not going to go into it, but we would do that because that's a non-negotiable for us. We will finish our work on time, make sure that we are on time for the party. We'll make sure that everything else is taken care of. If there was a phone call to be done to your parents, you would have done that. You would have booked a cab, you would have booked a venue, you would plan it to the T, right? Having that late night party with your friends, because that's a non-negotiable for you. I mean, I'm just using a very lame example here, but all I'm saying is that at any given point of time, knowingly or unknowingly, there are certain things which we have made as non-negotiable for us. How good or bad they are, how good they are doing to you, or how what impact they are having on you is something which you need to reflect for yourself, right? That is where self-reflection comes in. That point I agree with you. But consciously or unconsciously, we all have made certain things in our lives at that point of time which are non-negotiable for us. All of us do that.
I think what I'm also talking about is more in terms of, having those kind of conflicting priorities. So to say that I want to do well in my, like very, very simplistically put, that I want to do well in my career as well. And I want to be a helicopter mom also. So you can't, I mean, so very simple thing that, I get upset when I am working and I don't get rest, but I can't sleep when it's my time to rest because I'm thinking about work. So that kind, like I'm talking more of that kind of conflict that happens. And, I think even though in theory, like if I talk about myself, in theory, I think I have a lot of it sorted, but when it comes to practice, I also fumble a lot. And I think that is where your kind of direction or your advice of just having to remind yourself constantly that what is your non-negotiable, and this is a choice that you have made, nobody's forcing it on you, kind of becomes very helpful.
Yeah, another fascinating thing, if I may share, and it just struck me as you were saying, is that you'll be amazed at the evolution you yourself will go through as you go through this parenthood journey, right? And I was reflecting on it when you were speaking, right? If I look at my own evolution in last 7 years, right, as a human being, right, as an individual who has a certain degree of certainty in his mind that what he wants to do or what he doesn't want to do, the negotiables and non-negotiable, all the stuff which I'm talking about, I'm 150% sure that if we had this conversation around this topic 7 years back, I would be clueless. I would have no idea about it, right? And therefore, I just feel that the kind of evolution which you go through as a human being once you have a child in your life is unparalleled. I don't think I've had this kind of evolution ever in last 37 years before Meher came on board and came in our lives versus now, right? And that's very fascinating. That is absolutely fine. There's no way I could have said any of these things to you if you would have had this conversation with me before 2nd September 2016. I'm very certain about that.
Yeah, it's fascinating that you say that, because I have been thinking about this evolution bit for a very long time. And, this is interesting how we evolve, I think, exponentially when you have this
Yeah.
responsibility, which comes your way of raising another life and, giving them
Yeah.
life. And also, speaking of evolution, I want you to look back to a moment in your parenting journey or multiple moments in your parenting journey where you felt extremely overwhelmed and you were like, like, what is happening? And whether it was in a good way or in a frustrating way or just very, very overwhelmed. And then what did that experience led to and how did you navigate that?
I can think of only one actually, to be honest. And this is
Mm-hmm.
when Meher was about a year and a half old, right? And Aman had to go to, I think, Malaysia, Singapore for about a week or 10 days to conduct some workshop. And up until then, Meher always had four of us together, right?
Yeah.
Me, my mom, dad, and Aman. It was going to be the first time when she was going to be, Aman is going to be away from, was going to be away
Right.
from Meher, right?
Yeah.
So we thought what we can do about it. And honestly, we all were nervous about it, right? That how
Yeah.
will this even play out, right? So explored various options. And finally, the option where we landed up with was because, if I'm not wrong, in fact, I remember this clearly, Meher was still feeding, right? So at that point in time. So even the thought of, her to be away from Aman when we had not even weaned her off from that stage was quite overwhelming, right? So the finally where we landed was I decided to take off from my work and decide to travel along with Aman to Malaysia, obviously with Meher, with us, right? So we landed up in Malaysia. This was Malaysia. Yeah, this was Malaysia. We landed up in Malaysia. Meher, all of 1.5 years old, right? And just to ensure that, Aman is around Meher. Now, little did we know that the schedule which Aman had was she had to leave at around 7:30 in the morning and she would come back only at 7:38 in the night.
Wow.
Right? Because she was conducting these day-long workshops. And it was only me and Meher. It was going to be only me and Meher for the whole day. Right? So essentially what was happening was Meher was asleep when Aman would leave, and it was her sleeping time by the time Aman would be back during a normal course of day.
Wow.
So this was the problem statement, if I may say so. So we landed up in Kuala Lumpur and we said, okay, because there was no other way. We just could not risk the fact for Aman to be away, so far away from Meher, because we had not prepared for it. So we landed up in Kuala Lumpur, and honestly, I remember the first day. So we landed up in the evening. We went to the hotel. We slept off. Next day morning, Aman got up, got ready, and went to office. Meher was still sleeping. Once she left is when the realization dawned on me, because I had never spent time all by myself with Meher up until then. There was, as I said, there was always this village around us, right? So it was me and Meher sleeping, and 1.5 years old. And I like, okay, now what is going to happen? She's going to wake up. She's not going to find Aman around her. How's she going to react to this? What am I going to do? Right. Up until then, I was still struggling to figure out way how to feed her, feed her as in food and all of that, because honestly, I had not cracked that code. Let me put it that way. I had not cracked the code of how to put her to bed. It was still trial and error method, right? So it was extremely overwhelming to, as those thoughts started going around, she's going to wake up, she's not going to find anybody except me at home or in that hotel room. And I had to do all of that. And I knew how to do all of that. But I had to do all of that without any support or without anybody being around. Right? Extremely overwhelming. Extremely. I was panicking. I would not deny that. And it was tough, right? She woke up, she was cranky, she didn't find Aman around, then had to pacify her, and again, trial and error, figure out ways to, put her at peace, figure out a way to feed her, get her ready. Okay, then what do? We can't possibly stay in the hotel for room for the entire day. A kid will not, right? So then went on to Google, figured out places nearby where I could take her. And I remember that those 7, 8 days actually, Neha, to be honest, actually changed my relationship with her.
Yeah.
Right? Because what really happened was we realized, both of us, and obviously she was too little to even possibly comprehend this,
Yeah.
but we've realized a way to coexist with only each other around.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So honestly, ever since then, and actually it's during those 7, 8 days is when I actually cracked a way of figuring out, okay, what does it take for me to find out how to keep Meher engaged for a long period of time?
Yeah.
Without getting, it was tiring. It was obviously extremely tiring without getting bogged down. Whether it was, figuring out different games with her, taking her out to places like zoos and bird parks and whatnot to keep her engaged. Also understanding that a little child only has that much of energy, right? So
Right.
at what frequency will she feel hungry? At what frequency will she, feel tired to go to bed or to sleep? I obviously did not know all of that.
Yeah.
Those 8 days actually changed that. What will it take for me to put her to bed? All of that changed. As I said, those 8 days actually transformed the way we as me and Meher rather started understanding to coexisting with each other. Also, actually, my relationship with her also changed from then on.
Yeah.
To be honest, that was the beginning of her becoming a papa's girl, if I may say so.
Is she a
It wasn't
papa's
like
girl?
she is when she has to. As I said, I told you, right? She's very, very conscious of the fact that she will not say this in front of anybody if people are around. Also, coming back to the point, to me, though that was a period when it was extremely overwhelmed. I was extremely nervous, anxious, scared. I mean, those are the words which come to my mind. I mean, I have goosebumps when I think about that even now, that those 8 days. But I also feel that, I was blessed that I actually ended up having that time with her, right? Or this entire thing transpired.
Yeah.
Because if it would not have transpired, I would have possibly taken much longer to understand her as a kid.
Right.
I almost got fast tracked into knowing my own kid under various dimensions of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And obviously from there on, I've only built on it, and our relationship has only gone stronger from there. But that, to me, that was one period which I can vividly remember. And beyond, after that, it has never happened. It has never happened, at least as part of parenthood. I've never felt more overwhelmed. I've never felt overwhelmed at all, in fact.
Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of that famous example that we give of learning on the job, that you are just thrown into the pond and then you learn to swim. And it just sounded like that, sitting
And
here.
she teaches you. The kid teaches you. That's the most fascinating part. And one of the things which I also realize, kids also understand what you are going through. Right? So after a period of time, she understood that, listen, I'm all by myself. That's me, my father. Right? I may be exaggerating it. I may be reading too much into it, but I feel that, she understood it, and her level of throwing tantrums or being anxious about the fact that her mother or her grandparents are not around her went down significantly. I may also want to take credit on myself that I figured out a way to pacify her, but I would not go down that. But I just feel that she understood it, that, this is a new situation. It's only two of us, and there's a certain way to deal with it.
Yeah, I relate, quite a bit to that, because not to this extent, but a very, very small version of this happened with us when I went to a meeting, only to a meeting, 2 hours away from home, for an entire day, and he had just started to have solids, and I was quite anxious. Siddhant, my husband, was quite anxious because feeding him was my responsibility. He used to feed him sometimes with bottle and all of that, but never solids. So I left him a list of the to-dos, and then, this 11 a.m. this, and this much, these many scoops, these many, spoons, and this bowl, this spoon, and all of that happened. And we were quite anxious. And then I came back and I kept checking in on him, on the way, while I was in the meetings and while I was coming back. And it was all normal. And I was like, what is happening? How is it all normal? And then when I came back, and Siddhant told me that it was so uneventful, nothing happened. And it just went so smoothly. And I was like, my normal days are not uneventful. How was this abnormal day uneventful? But I totally agree with you. The guy, maybe he realized that, he saw Papa is
Right.
on his own and he just has to cooperate. And
Right.
he was a good boy at that point of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So,
It happens. It absolutely happens.
yeah,
I see it happening all the time, right? So like Meher is full of energy at home,
yeah,
right? There's never a dull moment. When she's around, full of energy, she'll throw, full of badmashis, right? And
uh-huh.
I take full credit for teaching her all those badmashis, by the way. She'll do pranks. Again, I take credit for that with
Uh-huh.
everybody, right?
Uh-huh.
But the moment she realizes that she is alone with her Baba, Dadi, me, or Aman, right? If we are
Yeah.
not around, she won't do it. She
Mm,
just would not do it. She'll be like a prim and proper kid. And without anybody telling her, she just
mhm.
transforms, right?
Right.
And I think it's got to do with the fact that they realize that they understand that there is a responsibility on them
Yeah.
as well now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think they also read the energy of the room and
Yeah, yeah,
they
yeah.
channelize it much better than
Oh yeah.
probably we adults do. Again, it's very cliched, but children teach us so much.
Oh
And
yeah.
so we go back and we see, oh my God, such a simple thing, but how I have forgotten it in the process of living my life.
Actually, come to think about it, and I say this quite often at home, not the
Yeah.
first time I'm saying this to somebody outside home here, and I'm
Uh-huh.
saying this to you because you have pets as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things which are common between pets and a kid who's growing up. And two things which comes to my mind is one is this unconditional love which they give to you.
Mm.
Absolutely. Pets do that to you, kid will do that to you as well. I mean, I always feel this that, the amount of love which I give to her is nowhere in comparison to what she gives back to me. No way. Same was with my pets as well.
Yeah.
And the second one is their ability to, as you said, sense the energy in the room. I remember when we had a pet, my mom had fractured her leg, and one of the boxes we had extremely naughty. But when my mom returned from the hospital with a bandage on her leg, for that 1 month period, he just did not let go of mom. He would just lie down
Yeah.
beside my mom, no naughtiness, nothing, always looking at her. Same thing happened when my mom was unwell. Meher was barely 2 years old, right?
Uh-huh.
And we had taken her for an annual health checkup, and there were some complications. She had to undergo a medical procedure. She came back with her hand bandaged and all of that. Usually, when people would come, I mean, one of us will come back home from anywhere. Meher will jump onto that person. Will
Yeah.
tell them all the stories. I mean, the usual.
Yeah.
She didn't utter a word that day, and she
Mhm.
didn't leave her grandma for next few days till the time she had that bandage in her hand, right?
Wow.
So it just there's a lot of correlations there. I don't know how it plays out, how mind is
Yeah.
wired, how the brains are
Yeah.
wired,
Yeah.
but I do see a lot of correlations. The reason I don't say about this to the outside world is because whenever I say this at home, right, that Meher, you're doing this, Bruno used to do like this. Bruno was my pet's name. My mom would be like, what the hell? You're comparing your daughter with your pet, right? And I don't see anything wrong in that because
Yeah.
I'm not doing this in any with any bad intention. I'm saying
Yeah.
this because I actually feel it, right?
Yeah.
And I just give you two examples. I'm sure you're gonna see this happening at your home as well,
Yeah.
given you have four pets. There's so many similarities which you will see in a kid as the kid grows up and your own pets as well.
This is so right, actually, like for the longest time, again, I'm going into my story, but for the longest time, we didn't want to have a kid because we always used to say that we have four kids, what more do
Yeah,
we want? So,
yeah,
and they are children who never grow up. The human kids grow up, the animal kids do not. So they
very
always need
beautiful.
you, they always are there for you unconditionally, and all of that. And yeah, quite rightly put, how pets also are very perceptive, and how they
Yeah,
read the energy in the room.
yeah,
And now we are seeing this with our son also, because how he interacts with the dogs, and how
yeah.
that bond of sibling rivalry is building up. It's very fascinating to see. You should see some of their fights. He
Oh,
fights with them, and it's all very playful, and it's always a full house. So yeah, I'm glad
nice.
you brought that up about pets. I can go on and on, but we are here to, listen to your stories. I also want you to tell us that maybe a small moment, that it was small, but it had a big impact on you in your parenting journey, that something very small happened and then maybe something big changed.
As Meher was growing up, and this is when she was few months old, up till about a year old, year and a half, right? One
Uh-huh.
of the very unique things she used to do is was that, whenever somebody would go out, and I used to be the one who used to travel a lot even during that point of time for work. So for 3 days, 4 days, about a week as well. And when I would come back home, I'll pick her up. First thing she would do is she'll cry. She would cry for 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. It was very fascinating. She would do this every single time for almost a year. And what I realized was, obviously, as a kid, she misses your presence. And different people and different kids now, in that sense, have different ways of expressing that emotion. And this kid way of expressing that emotion is actually by letting it out in the form of crying. And then I realized that it is so fascinating, right? That even at that age, she had found an outlet for her own emotions. The thing which then kept on with me, has remained with me, that it's perfectly okay to, let go of your emotions, take them out in whichever shape and form. It took us some time to even understand, right? And that what was happening. But then the correlation was very simple, that, this is her way of letting you know that she missed you. That has remained with me, because for a longest period of time, I always felt and believed, I guess a lot of us do, that it's not okay to show your emotion. Maybe that's how we've been brought up, or we've been conditioned like that. I don't know what the reason for that is. But to me, the realization was that a kid who's few months old, if she can do it, right, you better will do it. And I think that's very fascinating and a huge learning for me.
Saurabh, now that we are kind of towards the last part of our journey, what I'm most interested to know, because I have seen a drastic change in you and transformation for the better in you, from your pre-parent to post-parent self or parent self. If you were to sit across your pre-parent self, what would be one piece of advice or something that you would like to tell that Saurabh?
Actually, only one thing. You need to take care of yourself. Nobody else will. I was only fortunate. I seriously think that I was only fortunate that by the time this realization came to me that, I need to take care of my own self, nothing drastic had happened to me. There was every possibility, every chance, a lot of things could have gone wrong as far as my own health was concerned. It didn't happen. It's just pure luck. All those things all the experience which we have spoken about, I'm just plain lucky that I've had a chance to experience those over the last 7 years. If you want to give yourself the best possible chance to experience so many fascinating things in life, being a parent and, your kid growing up and all the things which I've spoken about, you need to give yourself the best possible chance to live that long. Right. And that can only happen if you take care of yourself. I did for a very long period of time, for almost 2 decades. And that's one thing which I would definitely tell myself and I would change for sure.
Yeah, that is quite sobering. It's very humbling to hear that. It's very sobering, and I'm just so glad that nothing happened to you. We are having this conversation with a much fitter, more resilient. I have seen you earlier, and I'm seeing you now, and there is a remarkable difference in the kind of person you've turned out to be. And whether we say it or not, but I think in a lot of ways, the credit does go to your daughter, Meher.
100%.
This is one thing that I have been thinking about since I became a parent. I have decided that I will ask all my guests this question. In your parenting journey, there must be quite a few things that you thought that, this doesn't exist and it should exist. So it may be a product, it may be a service.
Yeah, what shouldn't exist in my mind is the amount of stuff which is there on the screen for kids. I just don't feel comfortable with that. In fact, one of the things which I feel very happy about, which I did with Meher 4 years back, was to wean her away completely from screen time, right? So she literally has zero screen time now for last 4 years. Only last few months, we have started this Saturday night movie time with family, where she sees about an hour of movie with all of us. But beyond that, she doesn't. I find it difficult, and I know that this will not last for too long, given there's so much out there, right?
Yeah.
And now she started going to school. There are, her friends all around her. They speak about the stuff. But I just feel that that's something that's possibly the only thing which I feel sad about, because growing up as kids, the amount of time we had for ourselves, for our friends, to go out, to explore, is diminishing, simply because of so much of screen time which is out there. So that, to me, is something which I would love to not have. I don't know if that possibility will ever happen or not.
And what would you want to have?
I think, one thing which saddens me is when playgrounds gets turned into buildings. Anyway, kids are not spending enough time outside. I find it extremely sad to see when open spaces in cities, metro cities, and that's where we live, are taken up, and these huge high rises gets built out. You're just taking away that opportunity for kids to explore themselves.
If I were to ask you, which is a tip or trick, but it's like almost like an hack which you stumbled upon or discovered. So, what would that one thing be that you just stumbled upon it and now that's your go to thing or was your go to thing?
So if I were to talk about absolute intangible, and I'll talk
Yeah.
about a tangible hack as well, absolute intangible would be to spend as much time with the kid as possible. You will learn so much about her or about your kid only by spending time with her. Likes, dislikes, emotions, discomfort, everything. And there is no other way for you to understand that unless you spend time with your kid,
Right.
right? And I think the bare minimum, as I said, as you rightly said, I'm not being prescriptive here, not giving this as an advice. But one thing which has really worked for me is that I've made it a conscious attempt to spend as much time with Meher as possible. For me, the downtime is with Meher. Come what may, there are these non-negotiable parts of my time in a day which is for her, and I don't compromise on that. And that made me understand her so much better, and therefore contribute to her upbringing, to her growth as well, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's almost like hygiene.
Now, before we wrap this conversation up, just the last piece of advice. If you were to give the fellow parents, or maybe some insight, that encapsulates your way of parenting and why that matters to you so much.
The realization that you have brought a life into this world, and therefore there's a certain responsibility you have towards that life, is something which you need to own up. How much you want to absorb is ultimately your call. If you actually take a call to absorb all of this in, the first and the foremost thing is that you need to sign up for it. You need to say that, yeah, I am going to make this a non-negotiable part of my life. To me, is the starting point. Once you do that, then everything else starts falling in place. That's number one, I would say. You need to have tons and tons of patience. I mean, there is no substitute to that. I'm still learning. I mean, I don't want to sound that, I have reached that stage. But yeah, I am a far more patient person than what I was 7 years back. And it's all credit to Meher and Meher's upbringing. That also has happened because I signed up for it. I said, I
Right.
want to do this. So
Yeah.
point one and point two. And lastly, as overwhelming as it may look or as it may sound at that point of time, like it was for me when I was sitting in that room in Kuala Lumpur and figuring out that when she wakes up, what I'm going to
Yeah.
do, take it from me that the kid teaches you. You just have to have the patience and the willingness to sign up for it. And lastly, I would say that if you do all of those three things, right, sign up for it, be patient, and learn from the kid as the kid teaches you, nothing is more fulfilling in life than this. Right? There is absolutely nothing more. I mean, just those four things, it just captures everything for me.
How beautiful, how beautiful. I seriously don't want this conversation to end, but we'll have to pause it for now. Thank you so much for sharing your joys and your journey with us. It was really, I think you bring a lot of infectious energy to the table. I am using HR jargon now. So, and I think that is also kind of transference. Very, very beautiful conversation and just a glimpse of your journey. Thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
No, thanks a lot to you, Neha, for inviting. In fact, I wanted to make sure that I compliment you for doing this, right? I mean, for starting this entire conversation, this podcast in a way which is one, not prescriptive,
Yeah.
the way you handle these conversation and bringing out these stories. I think it's important simply because one, there is no one solution. There's no one cookie
Yeah.
cutter approach to parenting, right?
Yeah.
But there is so much to learning to be had from each other through these stories, through these journeys which all of us are going through as parents. For someone to raise her hand when she herself is just 12 months into this journey, and I can imagine how much time and effort it would be taking for you to do this, is quite commendable. So yeah, kudos to you for doing this.
No, I had no choice, Saurabh. Thank you so much for saying these. Your words are very kind, but I am doing it very, very selfishly because I want to, you said that it's up to you how much you want to absorb. And I think it's not just true in parenting, but in life as well. So I want to absorb as many stories as I can be a part of. And this is my way of doing this for myself that I want to hear your story. So why not make a podcast out of it? So,
Incredible.
yeah,
Incredible.
but
All the
thank you.
best. All the
Thank
best.
you.
All the
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into this episode of Parenthood. We hope you enjoyed it and found some inspiration in Saurabh's story. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen so you don't miss out on future episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so share your thoughts and stories with us. Until next time, embrace the beautiful chaos of parenting. Bye for now.